Welcome everyone to In Before the Lock. We've got episode 25 for you. I'm Rob with the Electric Playground. We've got Davey with Stumblor Pinball. Big show for you guys. A bunch of fun topics. Davey, how you doing?
Robin Rath, I'm very good, my friend. I'm very good. I've finally gotten over the TPF lurgy. Quick question. Did you get sick after TPF?
You know, I heard about a lot of people that got sick. I didn't get sick till about a week later. I think it was a visit to the zoo that got me. How were you after that?
Well, I was all right. I mean, I got ill. But yeah, having spoken to people after I got back, some people were a lot sicker. Everybody seems to think there was like a COVID variant going around the floor. So it's my first super spreader event. Quite excited about that. I'm just pleased that I didn't get as sick as a lot of people.
Davey and I did a walkthrough on the show, a little F1 inspired thing, or we call it the pin walk. That video is out on our channel right now. I think like half the people we interviewed told me they were sick, so I think I got lucky for sure. But it seems like that's the thing with TPF. I remember this kind of storyline developing last year too.
Yeah, maybe, man. Everybody, I mean, look, if you think about pinball machines and, we're not using hand sanitizer, are we, when we're going up and playing these things. So, it is what it is. And, it's all worth it in the end, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, let us know how our audio levels are. We're trying to be a little more on top of that. Again, we've got a big show for you guys. We're just coming off TPF. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we saw there. We're going to be talking about tariffs because it's a hot topic.
That's all anybody's talking about. Yep.
It's a hot topic. Davey's been scouring the pin sides, getting lots of input. We've got some articles being posted about it, so we'll talk about that. We saw a ton of games getting shown for the first time at TPF. One game in particular announced. We've got Jersey Jack's some movie. What is that one?
Something about a wizard of some type.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we did play Portal from Multimorphic. We played Arcade.
Merlin's Arcade
from Turner.
Yep.
And then I'm excited because just got an invite to see Stern's next game on the 17th of April up in Chicago. So
that's 10 days away. 10 days away, man. You excited?
I am. I did it before for D&D. We've got a video out on that. This one, of course, is highly rumored to be Elwin's King Kong, which is a major title. So it'll be fun to see that and hear from him directly and see a bunch of folks that I've got to know. So excited for that one coming up. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Yep.
Tell me a little bit about how you got that invite. Is it like is it because you're a media personality or, how does that work?
Well, 50% of it is you, Davey. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, where's my invite? That's more to the point. That's the question I should be asking.
Yeah, so I think they had so much success with it before, they just broadened the pool. Alec went with me, and him just being invited with me, he was on the email blast. So I think they're being pretty open with like who they bring into that as that kind of email list grows.
Yeah. So just to be clear, you're second tier. Is that what you're trying to tell me? That's upsetting, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So it starts at 10 a.m. We've got a factory tour, and then they show the game for a couple hours. We got to play it last time. It seems like the schedule is pretty similar. And then they serve some dinner around 6:30. And then last time I went to a tournament at Antarium, whatever it's called, and that was like a $5 buy-in, and Roger Sharp was in the tournament, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, awesome!
Hopefully we'll be able to check some stuff out. Nick's going with me.
Cool. Okay,
we'll do some video for you guys.
Awesome. Yep. Yeah, can't wait for that, man. Very, very excited. But we'll talk a little bit more about Kong later in the show.
Definitely. So obviously, worldwide, probably on Mars, they were talking about tariffs over the last couple of days. It is major news. We're not gonna spend a whole show on it because it's like we're just gonna give you kind of some of our kind of thoughts on it. There has been a couple articles come out today about barrels of funds pricing. Dutch Pinball has come out with some info on it. Davey, you've been following a lot of threads. Like, what's your kind of thoughts on what you're seeing out there?
Well, I mean, look, the recent announcements weren't unexpected, weren't they? I mean, I think all of us were kind of waiting for the main news to come through that there was going to be blanket tariffs on all of the US's imports and import partners. And obviously this affects people like me massively, and people like you, Rob, as well. But I was obviously thinking about my business, mainly due to the fact that 95% of our customer base is in the US. So I was concerned that we were going to see a drop off in sales, as those tariffs were applied. Now, the first thing to note was, from a UK perspective, is that we were expecting a higher tariff rate than what we ended up receiving. So we were expecting 20% and it ended up being 10%. So I suppose you could say that's good news. I know I wasn't as upset as I thought I would be based on that news. But obviously we then, everybody was sort of communicating behind the scenes, jumping on the pinball forums, communicating with other mod makers just to sort of see what everyone's positions were based on the new news. Now, the thing that I found most interesting and strange about this was that, before the announcement, I expected that when the announcement was made, we were going to find out that that we as a company were going to be less competitive against US makers, because that's the whole point, right? Is to empower the US industry to be stronger than what it is. And then, jumping on, one of the Pinside forums recently, I'll just pull it up here as well. This is Myth Pinball, who produces speaker lights in the US. He mentioned that he's going to have no choice but to put an extra 20% tariff surcharge on all his products. All of our USA vendors that we order parts from, such as DigiKey, this is Mouser and companies like that who sell sort of individual parts, resistors, capacitors, that kind of thing, are already charging tariff surcharges. This is not going to be good for our industry. Now that was a very surprising read for me. And I suppose I should have thought about it earlier, but the reality is that because tariffs are going to be placed on, it's a blanket tariff, so all parts coming into the US are going to be, have some kind of price increase. If it's from China, it's going to be even more, and we don't even know what that price increase is yet because the dust hasn't settled. But the end result is that as a UK seller into the US, I'm going to have an advantage over US makers as it currently stands. And I thought that was absolutely crazy and bonkers and something that was completely unexpected. And I guess, Rob, you're going to be in a similar position.
Yeah. So a lot of the parts in our toppers do come from China. Let's talk about a standard LED strip that you guys have probably put up in your kids' bedrooms. Obviously, you have them in your pinball machines. You have them in our toppers if you have them. That part isn't made in the United States. It's just not made. And that's true of a lot of things. I was talking with Jimmy with Pinlights the other day about it, and I assumed it wasn't made. He validated that for me. They don't make that part here. And to this point, there's been a nice thing for small businesses with import fees. So when you import goods into your country, you as the importer pay those fees. That's true of these distributors who are going to be importing pinball machines. Like, the importer of the machine is going to have to pay that. And of course, that has to be accounted for somewhere in the equation. And for us, in a lot of small businesses, there was a thing where basically any invoice under $800 allowed you to avoid that. So for us, making toppers, like any specific given part usually didn't total over $800, so we were able to avoid that. And now, if I understand it correctly, from $0, $1, we're going to be paying. So it does make it very difficult to be competitive. I mean, the dust hasn't settled on it. Obviously, a lot of this tariff stuff has been subject to pretty quick changes. This one feels, of course, very different than that. But you're already seeing companies being proactive about this. You've got, for us at least, like in the case of our Pulp Fiction topper, which we recently just took deposits on, we had about 80 to 90% of those parts like already in hand, so we can avoid that on that particular item. But it'll be interesting. I mean, of course, we're going to explore alternatives. We'd love to have stuff made in the U.S. We'd love to find ways to handle it differently. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's just not, it's not going to happen overnight, you know, and you know, I mean, some of these trading relationships get built up over the course of years. And, you know, my wife works in the fashion industry, and, you know, during the last round of trade wars between the US and China, a lot of the fashion houses relocated a lot of their production to Vietnam, right? And Vietnam was one of the Asian countries that saw some of the hugest tariff increases during the latest round. So, you know, these fashion houses have already relocated production once to Vietnam. You know, they get a lot of stuff made in Turkey, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in India, and you know, all of these countries are seeing tariff increases. I know that the fashion industry in the US has been really struggling in recent years, and this is only going to make it worse. So there's going to be so many industries affected by this. You know, it's, you know, obviously, and pinball as well. You know, so we've got a couple of people in the chat. Hey, Charles Thomas, how you going, man? He just said the nice thing. We'll just get off Tariffs just for say, just got a boy yesterday. That's great, man. But he also said, Dutch Pinball announced tariff info today. Yeah, absolutely, mate. So we'll get onto that now. Could just quickly show that announcement on the stream. So I've been chatting with Barry. Well, I haven't been chatting with Barry. I've been chatting with Melvin behind the scenes, and he's been sort of relaying a little bit of info about, you know, how Dutch were trying to, I guess, strategize the tariffs and what they were going to do about the game. Now, as everyone knows, hopefully, about Dutch, they are building Alice in Wonderland. It's just about to start getting shipped out to the first customers in the Netherlands. It might have already arrived at some people's locations in the Netherlands. They're going to sort of spread out from there across the EU. But this most recent announcement essentially says that they're going to prioritize production of shipments for markets outside the US, and essentially wait until you know, the last possible moment, you know, just to see how it plays out at this point. I'm not sure that they've mentioned, I think, so for people who are unaware, Dutch essentially guaranteed that they were going to be able to ship all units by a certain date in 2025, was it? Or the start of 2026?
Well, it was you can get your deposit back if you don't get it within that time frame.
Yep, that's right. So I think probably what is likely to happen is that you know, if they can't ship to these people in the US, they'll get their deposits back or something along those lines. That's not specifically mentioned in this announcement, I don't think. But yeah, essentially it was just, you know, wait for the dust to be settled kind of things. But it was pretty much, I know that there was talk amongst some people that the 20% increase should be shared amongst the, you know, the customer and the distributor and Dutch themselves. But this is pretty much saying that that's not going to happen. And if you want your game early, then, you know, you're probably going to have to pay the tariff yourself out of your own pocket. Now, the comment section was pretty heated, I've got to say. You can see there's 184 comments here. Obviously, Neil jumped on. I jumped on too. There was a lot of... how should I put this? There's a lot of mischaracterization about what the tariff meant and where it was applied. Some people were talking about the fact that if Dutch already had their parts, then they wouldn't have to put up their prices. And a lot of people, I guess, accusing Dutch of raising their prices. Now, you know, it should be pointed out that Dutch haven't raised their prices. Their price is exactly the same as it always was. It's the cost to the importer that has gone up. And it's just a difficult situation for them to be in. You know, obviously Dutch want to get their games into the US. They want people to have their games. It's difficult from the customer's point of view because they thought they were going to be paying X for a game, and now they're going to be paying X plus 20%. So yeah, it's a really tricky one. I really feel for Barry and the team, and I hope it gets resolved soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough whenever you've taken a deposit on a price, and you've got to make a call on that. And obviously, they analyzed it and probably talked to their partners along the chain, and they communicated what they communicated. It's stuff my dad and I are in on Alice together, and of course we're going to be making something for that game, and it's like the timing of everything is really interesting because on some degree I want to wait because I want to possibly avoid that, but on the other hand, I'd love to have the game, excited about having the game, and we want to build something for the game too. So definitely,
but also if it doesn't come to the States, then suddenly your potential market for that product is halved. So, I guess that's a small drop in the ocean compared to what sort of Dutch are staring down the barrel of at the moment. But it's a consideration, and it just goes to show how far-reaching these implications are. But speaking of staring down the barrel of things, did you like my little segue there?
That's amazing. I'll pull it up. I'll pull it up for you. So toeing the line, we got the gladiators out there toeing the line on this one. Barrels did announce that they are holding their price, and they haven't taken deposits yet. They have a unique situation in that they've got a lot of competition with this release, with Stern's title coming, with Jersey Jack's title coming, and of course they're looking for competitive differentiators, and they're analyzing the situation, and they're deciding that they can do that. I haven't dug into this article too much. I guess they're not really confirming pricing because it says as a reference point, $10,599. But what's the conversation on this? Anything out there that you've seen?
No, so I haven't really. I mean, look, I think that most of the comments that I read were people going, "Oh, well done, thank you so much for doing that," and and too right, But I think it speaks, I guess, more towards their overall strategy of how they produce games. So much like how Labyrinth was. Really just sort of came out of nowhere over the course of a couple of weeks, and then suddenly it was ready to ship. That's always been Barrel's strategy is, get the games ready, get them built, get them in boxes, and so that when you announce, games are ready to go out the door. And that's always the way that they've wanted to approach these things. And so by virtue of that strategy, their next game will be, in the same boat. So all of the parts and everything would have been ordered 6 months or a year ago. On the one hand, it's awesome that they're keeping their prices static, but at the same time, they can do that because all of the parts they've already ordered in wouldn't have been subjected to tariffs. So they're essentially still building a pinball machine as though it was pre-Trump, pre-tariffs. And that's great news in terms of people who want to buy their next game. But it certainly doesn't mean that their next game after that isn't going to have the same problems that everybody's going to have, which is increased input costs.
Yeah. I mean, I got to assume that they've got a lot of those parts already here. I think it'd be really difficult to do that, otherwise, especially. Yep. I mean, we're talking about possibly 50% increase in price on these items, which across many items is very, very serious adjustment in your profit margins on something like this. So that must be the case.
Yeah, and it's just the bigger question, I suppose, is whether pinball as a industry can sustain those kind of price increases. I don't believe that it can. Which makes me think that potentially, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Kong and Jersey Jack's next game, which is Harry Potter, as announced by Jack. Before we sort of move on to those games, though, let's have a quick, just stick on Barrels just for a second, because interestingly, as part of the news with tariffs and everything, Barrels also just announced a couple of new products as well. The Thunder from Down Under, which is a shaker motor. The naming got people thinking that they were going to release Mad Max or something like that as their next game, but actually it was a shaker motor. So there's that. And they're also releasing some low reflective glass called Infinity Glass, which I thought was very interesting because we saw Multimorphic recently announced their own version of their clear glass, of the not low reflective glass. And it's just interesting, I think, because we're seeing manufacturers of pinball machines diversify their product range to essentially release the products that they're sourcing for their games onto the open market. So, this infinity glass that Barrel's using, they would have been using that on Labyrinth, I assume. The Shaker motor likewise. And they're thinking, well, why don't we release these as a standalone product and diversify our product range, which I think is really interesting. We saw it in Multimorphic, and now we're seeing it with Barrels.
And also we saw it with Spooky as well. So it's kind of funny. Spooky put out the Ghost Glass, which is an amazing name. I love this picture of Doug holding up the glass. I mean, these are tariff-free products, I would assume here, right? These guys bought a bunch of this stuff, and pricing will stick on that at least. Yeah,
I guess so. Well, this is the other interesting thing, because in that chat, that Pinside chat, which everybody should go and look at, because there's a lot of really interesting information there in terms of where these products come from. Like what parts of a pinball machine come from overseas and which get built internally. Now, my assumption was that all the heavier parts, like metalwork and glass and cabinetry, would all be made internally just by virtue of them being heavy, and so you would do your ass in shipping trying to get them pulled in. But that was refuted by I'm not sure. I think the glass is made internally, potentially. Cabinetry, I think, as well. I think the cabinetry is using Canadian birch, I think. So actually it is coming from overseas. But the metalwork, I assumed, was internal. But somebody who sort of works within that sphere and in that industry said, no way, definitely that would be coming in from China as well. So, there's we're looking at like 80% of the parts that go into a pinball machine are coming from overseas and will therefore be subject to tariffs. So it's quite a huge percentage. But, hopefully the glass is a US owned product and will be untariffed and remain at the prices that we're seeing.
We shall see. We shall see. Well, I think that's where we decided pre-show we were probably going to end it on tariffs. If you guys have any questions for us, let us know. I mean, I know that right now it's just going to be on a product by product basis. Hopefully we're not ever having to adjust things in real time like some of these companies, or unfortunately their timing has worked out that way. As far as you go, Davey, are all your products good to go for now?
Yeah, look, I mean, at this point it's just a 10% tariff. I know that Keir Starmer, who's the UK Prime Minister, is trying to play a very calm and reserved game when it comes to the current US administration. He's sort of going for appeasement. I think he's trying to stay off the radar. So look, if it stays at 10%, then all we'll have to do is probably a bit of admin in terms of people saying, where's my stuff? Why is it in customs? I think there's going to be, I don't think, most people in the US aren't used to having to receive a letter from the US Customs Department asking them to pay fees.
What we are used to is seeing the price of Medieval Madness change. We're used to seeing the price of the Big Lebowski change over the years based on lots of different circumstances. So, we'll see that. You may see that with our products too. I hate to say it, but it's like, from batch to batch, there's going to be different costs involved now. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
All right. Well, and also, a lot of us, maybe not all of us, are optimistic that some things will shake out. So we'll see how that goes.
I hope so, man. I hope so. You got to stay positive, man.
So Davey and I were at TPF, and we caught wind that there was a panel that we weren't listening in on. They were talking about Avatar, Jersey Jack, and it was announced officially that... What is my problem?
Harry Potter.
Clearly, I'm a big fan. Big fan.
I did that the other day with him as well, man. Don't worry. I don't know why.
So Harry Potter has been officially announced. Sometimes it's hard for us as consumers to sort out all these rumors and treat these things as fact versus rumors. But this was a rumor. It had not been confirmed by any party privy to the information. And Jack Guinari with Jersey Jack kind of casually said that the game was next. He also coupled it with something along the lines of don't spend any more dollars out of your own pocket until you get this game because it is coming. Charles,
which includes Avatar. Let's
includes
be,
Avatar. Let's not get into that. There's definitely a lot of commentary out there on this topic. Certainly, some people feel like Mark Seidens, who was the designer of Avatar, was caught off guard with that. He was there to celebrate something that is beautiful and amazing on so many levels, and that was kind of the wind was taken out of those sails. But the reason I wanted to talk about this, just because I feel like it has been beat to a dead horse, but from I happened to listen to a recent episode of Poor Man's Pinball podcast. I'm going to give them a quick shout out on this. This is this episode number 614. Experts claim JJP to lose $8 to $15 million from Jack's blah blah blah. So I haven't listened to these guys a lot, but I really enjoyed this episode because I was able to learn from it. We recently released Pulp. We did some teasers with it. There's obviously lots of different ways to launch products, and you're seeing that across the spectrum. But they decided to announce this in the way that they did. And I was really curious about this 8 to 15 million number. So I don't remember the episode word for word, but one of the really interesting things is the experts that he speaks of was ChatGPT.
So we all use it. Let's be honest.
No, definitely. But he had an interesting way of claiming that was a valid resource. This guy's pretty fun. I had never listened to him real closely. I think this is a fun one to listen to. So basically, on one hand, he claimed that the use of ChatGPT was valid in this non-scientific analysis because ChatGPT is able to read in seconds the amount of content that it would take us years to consume, right? So depending on how you're feeding it, and I'm not even up to speed with this tool as much as I could be. He was trying to say that it was able to listen to lots of podcasts. So apparently he was saying hey, I was able to tell it to listen to all this content, parse the content that was on Audible podcasts, and form an opinion on this, along with a lot of marketing data that a Harvard professor might know, right? So it's able to be smart about releasing products in general. And also the guy that was talking is a marketing major too. So he obviously trusts his ability to do this research. So he kind of equated, he was really brutal as far as how frustrated he was with the scenario, so far as to say that he now doesn't care about the game and won't talk about it anymore because he's just so upset about how they released it. And his argument was, or his analogy was, that imagine you're going to a surprise party for your father. He's turning 60, 70, and there's 50, 100 people at this surprise party. And everyone's very excited, right? The energy for a surprise birthday party is a fun experience because you're excited about seeing the face of this person that you love walk into the room. And imagine, Davey, if your dad's coming in, right? And I whisper to you, be like, hey, Davey, he knows. It totally takes the energy out of the room. Everyone's energy, everyone's talking about it. Oh, he knows. And it just really ruins the experience. And ultimately the payoff of the entire thing that you've invested in goes away. And the argument that he's trying to make is that there's so much hype around this game. It's literally the biggest game ever. I don't know if that's true, but he's trying to say it's a big deal, and it is. And you want a day one sellout, right? And a day one sellout also creates huge demand on all the special editions or standard edition, to where instead of having to go to the secondary, you can't, because the hype is so big. You have to go to the primary source, which is Jersey Jack. And the amount of sales that result from that situation, based on the research he did, could affect at the end of the day the number of units sold by 20%, which is 1,200 units. Well, the retail value of 1,200 units is $15 million, right? So I don't think it's out of the question to say, no matter how good the game is, if you're not hyping it to create a day one sellout properly, there's no doubt that it could have a 1,200 unit impact on the sale.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of people now that are never going, and then this is his argument, basically, they're never going to forget that Jersey Jack fumbled this, and they're going to go into the day one with a wait and see attitude, because they're just going to believe that it's not going to sell out. And if it doesn't sell out, and it could have sold out, it could have a 20% or more impact. So that's an interesting analysis, and it's something that we as creators of products and how we kind of make those announcements to build that hype should be thinking about, for sure.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, I think it's sort of a similar type of idea as to why we put so much effort into our packaging, you know, you want somebody to receive something and their immediate reaction to be like, I know this is going to be good, because I can tell already by the look of the package how much effort and work they put into that. If they put that much work into that, then it's going to be an amazing experience all the way through. Like if you just receive a cardboard box with old bits of bubble wrap, you know, you feel deflated. And I think that it's the same thing with this announcement. You know, you feel like if they fumbled that, then what else are they going to fumble? You know?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of made the argument is like, literally, if he was wearing a purple suit with a tie, like at least just something so that it's a string of excitement, rather than starting the entire thing with wah wah. And he felt like it's just like impossible to course correct on, no matter how much money they spend on the video, blah blah blah. So it's came across really harsh, but at the end of the day, like, the game is going to be the game, but the marketing is going to drive the FOMO. You know?
But, and you know, even the fact that podcasts like this exist is a bad thing. You know, like even the fact that people are talking about it in this way, rather than thinking, what if it's this? What if it's that? Oh my God, wouldn't it be great if there was Quidditch? Wouldn't it be great if it was, you know, like, we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about the announcement and how bad it was, and how much money they could potentially be losing over it. Like all of these negative things that are secondary to what we should be talking about, which is how amazing the game's going to be.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't even, you know, before I listened to that, I don't even know where I stood on it, because I wasn't that interested in the game. So we're talking about it here because it's an interesting analysis for all of us as we're thinking about things, to kind of weigh. But, you know, the game is most likely going to be amazing, and maybe we'll end up all not overpaying for it because there's not this huge demand, you know, on it as quickly.
So I'm just going to put this here because it blows sunshine up my ass. So thank you very much, Charles. Very much appreciated, mate. Thank you. But I mean, you know, in terms of the announcement, I mean, to bring it back to how it relates to mod makers and the strategies that we use for announcements. You know, it's something that we talk about a lot, isn't it, Rob? You know, like how we, you know, what's the best strategy and approach to releasing a mod. And it's a bit of a balancing act sometimes, because you know, sometimes, you know, you want to get these things out there as quickly as possible in order to start generating hype, but, you know, but then is it just middling hype for a long period of time, whereas you'd be better off just slamming it all at one point, a bit like Barrels does, and having mods ready to go out the door in order to capitalize on that hype.
Yeah, you know, I talked with a couple of the guys at Barrels about this specifically, and they believe that the second that you let the outside know about something, they start imagining what the thing would be, and the only reality is that they're going to be disappointed in what they see, because there's no way you're going to deliver on their flavor of the magic that they were looking for.
That's really interesting, and I believe that. I think
but on our side, it's like we always after the fact to be like, hey, like, I wish you would have asked me what I thought about it, or I wish you would have brought me in, you know, because I could have told you what I thought, or we're just excited about building it and we want to share it with the world and bring people into it. But it's you know, it definitely comes at a cost, for sure.
It's a double-edged sword for sure, isn't it? You know, and I don't know if I don't know if any of us have really sort of cracked it. I mean, we're getting closer all the time, and I know that you know, certainly mod makers have stepped up their production quality of their promotional videos and things. Rob, watching your latest Pulp video, was just so impressive in terms of the editing. Masters of Pinball, my good friend Bart always does a fantastic job of his editing as well. And it's just great to see, isn't it? Because we all sort of try and push the bar out, every time we sort of do these things. And then, seeing other people sort of having the same idea and also, trying to raise the bar rather than push bar, try and raise that bar. It's really inspiring, isn't it? Because, you sort of pick up on techniques and strategies that other people are using and then try and incorporate it into your own release cycles as well. But yeah, I mean, and that's why it's so surprising to see, what happened with the Harry Potter thing, because that's, can you imagine? Look, I mean, I suppose we kind of do it on this as well too, don't we? I mean, the difference is that, we're probably announcing mods early on the pod to about 5 or 6 people who then don't communicate it to anybody else.
Yeah.
Whereas Jersey Jack's doing it, in front of the entire pinball community.
It's a different scale, and look, like a new game is way more exciting than a new mod at the end of the day. So the stakes are different. Obviously, the games are typically already announced, so it's not like you're like waiting on pins and needles to know if there's going to be a Harry Potter mod coming, because there's Harry Potter mods coming from Davey if there's a Harry Potter game. It's just inevitable. Now on the licensing front, you're probably not going to see a Harry Potter topper from us. I don't think I want to touch that one, so I'll kind of take the air out of the room on that one. But it sounds fun. All right,
well, let's talk a little bit about the other new releases that are sort of coming out recently.
So we took our time and put out a video today. So if you guys check out our YouTube channel, you can see a 1-hour walkthrough. We did something kind of fun where we literally just filmed for an hour walking around the floor. Didn't really prep anybody that we were interviewing, that we were coming by. So you're going to get some kind of, off the cuff reactions on a few things. But 2 of those interviews, one of them was with Chris Turner with Turner Pinball, talking about his new game. And then we ended up interviewing Steven Silver, who's the video artist behind Portal. So yeah, Davey, what were your thoughts on those two games?
Oh yeah, well, I thought they were great, man. I mean, my only issue with Portal is that you guys were absolutely destroying me when we were playing the game, and I couldn't hit the shots and do all the cool things that you guys were doing. But look, I think I've got a soft spot for multimorphic. I think that they put, I mean, they're hugely innovative, number one. I think that they're, the tech and the mechs that they're putting into their games are improving on every release. They're using things that I've never really seen before. In Portal, for instance, there's like a ramp flipper sort of thing where when the ball, that center shot where the ball sort of goes past, hits the optos, and then the flap opens up to then push the ball into the lock area in the back, was really exciting, and I don't think I've ever sort of seen that before. They're using a lot of so I think, maybe somebody who's more familiar with multimorphic can correct me, but I don't think they've ever created ramps and mechs in the lower half of the playfield before, or done a 2-tier release, which they're now doing for Portal. So Portal is getting released in 2 versions. One that just has the back section, which is the normal section that multimorphic, the module that allows you to change out the games on a multimorphic system, P3. But Portal also comes with an upgraded or a enhanced edition, I'm not sure what it's called, that has various other mechs in the lower half of the playfield as well. I'm not sure they've ever done that before. So it's great to see that they are sort of, pushing the boundaries of what's capable in those games. and I think the general reaction to Portal was really favorable. I know that people like Neil McRae, who are generally pretty ambivalent to P3 releases, was really impressed. There was always long lines for the whole of the festival. Jerry and the Multimorphic crew seemed to be pretty buoyant as to, how everyone was reacting to the game.
Yeah, I think for me, it made me question a little bit what I think I want out of the next pinball machine that I buy. As I contemplate buying like a D&D or a Jaws, like I feel like I kind of know what I'm going to get out of those games. And I think while that's on one side a really good thing, it's challenging because like eventually after owning, like Bond or Godzilla, like eventually I want it out the door. And certainly that could happen with Multimorphic, but at the excitement of a completely different play experience, even at the cost of, different flippers in that experience, might be worth it. Yeah. It also got me really excited about Final Resistance for the first time, because in my head, it's like if I'm going to buy Portal, which is generally a theme that I'm excited about, first one for Multimorphic, I can also play this other game. And I got to play Final Resistance for the first time thinking about actually being an owner of it rather than it just being a novelty. And I was like, wow, like this game actually kind of does play like a Stern, and it's very fast, and it's got those TNA kind of nostalgic sounds because it's basically TNA 2. So kudos to those guys across the board for like creating a new thought process for me. And I think a lot of people about owning their platform. And as long as they kind of keep making those headways, because they've got a great customer base, like we know that, even if
very passionate.
Everyone isn't on board with that, I think if they keep making those headways, it'll pay off for them. Yeah.
So one of my biggest criticisms, I suppose, of the P3 system, and it's a silly one, but it means a lot to me, is the flipper plinths. So on a multimorphic system, the flippers are about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch. There's about a 3/4 inch plinth that the flipper buttons sit on. So it feels...
And a platform would be probably a term that in America we'd probably be more familiar with. Okay. It's basically the buttons are on their own extruded platform, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And now there's a reason for that, and that is because there's a screen in the play field, and so there's obviously some fit issues with that. But it just feels different to a normal pinball machine as a result of that. And I find that more off-putting than the different flipper feel and the screen in the lower half of the play field. The screen I think is great. The flipper field is different, but not something that you can't overcome. But the platforms for the flippers, I just think, make it feel different to a normal pinball machine, and I think that's a big problem. But interestingly, Scott Denisi also sort of I'm guessing, shares my distaste for that, and has created like a low profile version of the flipper buttons that are available on Pinball Life. So if you share my distaste for that, then you can jump on Pinball Life and order a low profile version of the flipper buttons to make it play a lot more like a normal pinball machine. So that's fantastic as well. And Jerry, if you're listening, and I doubt that you are, but if you ever circle back and listen to this podcast because somebody told you to, just incorporate the low profile ones into every game, man. Like I'll probably talk to you about it at some point, but I think that's such a good idea. And the fact is it's technically possible. So get it done.
Yeah, I think there's an issue there that along with 3 buttons, it's just a lot of unfamiliarity. And that particular issue, I didn't necessarily register what it was, but I agree with you after really kind of analyzing it. But overall, really cool offering, great theme integration. There's a lot of mechs in that one. So great to see them making strides. So Turner, so we got a new game from Turner, Merlin's Arcade.
Merlin's Arcade, yep.
Original theme, pretty cool concept in that it's basically like Merlin owns an arcade and he's got all these games and you're playing all these different games. So there's like billiards and skee ball and foosball, maybe. Yeah. And I think everyone's generally surprised to see a new game from them on this timetable and this timing. But generally, a lot of questions about, of course, an unlicensed theme. And why are you making that move? Are people going to buy 500 of them, which is a lot? I think that's their number.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting thing, Davey, is you've kind of come across some conversations or seen some conversations with Chris regarding, that decision.
Unlicensed themes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of headwinds, I think, for this new game. And I'm sure Chris won't mind me sort of talking about them. But number one is the fact that, the tariff conversation and stuff and what that means for a new game from him. The fact that they announced a price before any of the tariffs were announced and stuff. And so he's pretty much locked in on that now. Or if he does raise the price, that's going to further complicate things. And the price is higher than it was for Ninja Eclipse as well. I think it's around 2K or possibly 3K more than Ninja Eclipse. And he's looking to sell more numbers of them too. So we got 500 units, as you mentioned. It was only 100 for Ninja Eclipse. So there are a lot of barriers to Merlin's Arcade doing well, I think. It's a massively competitive time. He's got a lot of big games to go up against this year. And I guess the big question is whether his customer base is strong enough and loyal enough and passionate enough that they'll sort of see him through this next cycle. Now, as you mentioned, it's an unlicensed theme, and I guess I'd always assumed that the reason why people chose unlicensed themes was because they're cheaper to make. But I was recently reading a Pinside thread where somebody, and I'm sorry I can't reference you because I can't remember who it was, but somebody asked him about this very thing, and Chris kind of said that he doesn't believe that to be the case. And it didn't go into many details, but it sort of got me thinking about why that might be the case. Now, obviously, if you've got a huge IP like Jaws or Harry Potter, you're going to be paying through the nose for that license and for that intellectual property. However, not every release is a Jaws or a Harry Potter. There's a lot of licenses that are a lot cheaper than that to purchase. Now, the difference between a licensed theme and an unlicensed theme is that with a licensed theme, if you pay the money and you get, let's say, all of the assets of that property and they let you go to town on it, then you've potentially got music, you've potentially got call-outs, you've got video clips, you've got storylines, you've got characterizations. Really, the only things you don't have are playfield art and decal art that you need to contract. But having worked with Melvin a fair bit during the Alice project and stuff, I know that one of the biggest burdens for them in producing that game was getting the animations done and sorted. They took a long time, they cost a lot of money, they were really hard to direct because you were using a third party to do it. A lot of these companies, Stern have their own internal animation department, but a lot of these companies probably wouldn't. I'm sure JGP does as well, but a lot of these companies don't. And so you're contracting a third party to produce these things for you, and so there's going to be some a learning process involved in that working relationship to make sure you're getting the best out of them. They might have multiple contracts running at any one time, so you might not be getting the content that you need at the right times. It's a real struggle, and so so there's those hurdles. You need to redo all. You need to create all your own call outs if it's an original IP. And create all the storylines and do all the R&D behind all of that. So I think probably, we sometimes think that an original license is an easier process. But we have to think about the money that you're saving on licensing. You then pumping back into the product to produce all these assets that you wouldn't get through a license. So it's an interesting angle that I sort of hadn't really considered before until reading this Pinside thread. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, no, we talked about this a little bit before, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. But then I started to think about just creating that. Like, it's one thing for the playfield artwork and the cabinet artwork is like if you're doing Goonies, you're of course going to have artwork created for that, but you're going to rely really heavily on movie footage, assuming you have that. And there's not going to be necessarily a ton of animations that you're having to create for a small company like his. That could become very expensive. I know from talking to him that he is interested in doing licensed stuff, but I mean, he's also, he's kind of got this like family friendly theme thing that he's doing with both his games. Like Ninja Clips was very family friendly, and he also spent a lot of money writing an actual storybook that included the game. So maybe he's hitting a section of the market that we don't, as like hardcore pinball guys, really acknowledge, because you've got you've got Wonderland Amusements, who clearly sold some machines, and like I think that everyone thought that Kickstarter wasn't even going to be successful, let alone highly successful. So my hope is that Chris is like, kind of biding his words as he communicates to the collectors community, but able to offset that with other markets by his choices, because it's a fun game. It's actually a smartly executed IP. It's just we live in a market now where it's like original comedies and movie theaters don't do well. It's all Marvel stuff. It's just like that's what we kind of like are eating constantly. But it's not, as an artist, it's not something I necessarily love to see. So I hope he does okay with it.
Yeah. And we should also mention as well, like the innovation that he's put into Merlin's Arcade as well. So one thing that we've never seen before is I'm trying to remember what he called the technology. Can you remember?
It's something flip, but it's essentially a post pass kind of like button where it just half flips.
There's two buttons on the side of the cabinet, and the top button essentially does a very small burst on the coil, so that instead of getting like a really powerful flip that you would normally use to shoot the ball up the playfield, it just like lightly flicks the ball. And there's footage around of, I think, Chris demonstrating the use of that, where he's essentially just like flipper passing from one flipper to the other and juggling the ball, but in just a very sort of casual way. Between
he calls it finesse flip, which is actually a pretty good
finesse
name.
Flip. Yeah. It's quite a good name. Yeah, not as good as Ghost Class, but not bad. And it's, this is a really interesting idea, isn't it? Because, in a lot of ways, we haven't really seen any innovation around, flipper buttons. And okay, so let's have a think about this. We've seen staged flippers, so that the flipper buttons at different depressions can control upper flippers and lower flippers at a different timings, depending on how much you push the flipper button, which enables you to essentially cradle a ball low and still use an upper flipper to do things in moments like multi-ball and stuff. And then more recently in Jaws, we've seen the use of holding an upper flipper button using the center button in order to stage a ball halfway up the playfield and then still use your lower flippers. So there is some innovation happening around flippers, but certainly around flipper power, we've never seen anything before, I don't think. So this is a really exciting idea from Chris and Turner. And I couldn't get it working at the time, but not like Chris was, but I think, with a bit of practice, it could turn into like a really innovative, tool for doing certain things in the game. Now, whether that would replace, existing techniques, which is like post passing and things like that, which are sort of well established ways of getting the ball from one flipper to the other in a safe way, I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see whether it carries on into his next title and possibly gets picked up by other manufacturers.
Yeah. And we are seeing some interesting stuff. Evil Dead has a flipper in the sling, and I actually learned that you can actually hold that flipper up and let that ball sit on top of the flipper, which is very similar to what you do with Jaws whenever you cradle the ball on that right flipper. Uh, so definitely some cool stuff coming down the pipe on flippers. So we're going to wrap this up relatively soon. We've got a new game coming from Stern next week. Again, I'll be headed to see that release. We're all assuming it's Kong, Elvin's next title, but super excited to see what they come up with. I mean, like, I got to think it's going to be packed, right? Like, that
I
seems
hope
to
so,
be
man.
pretty
I
important
mean,
these days. Yeah.
we think it's going to be an island theme based on what did they do? They registered some kind of a name that was like King Kong and the Island of Darkness or something like that. So we think it's not going to be New York based. Probably going to be islands. Probably going to be palm trees and stuff. Super excited about it. The word is that it's going to be a difficult game. So it's going to be a tourney sort of game, a game for tournament players, is what the word on the street is. So it'll be interesting to see whether that eventuates. I
It's
hope it's
interesting.
packed.
It's interesting how we talk about, like, if we know the title, we're building up all these expectations, but it's so different from Stern to Jersey Jack, because like Jersey Jack has been delivering non Wizard of Oz level games since Wizard of Oz and keeps doing that. And we have, like, Harry Potter, we believe it should be Wizard of Oz packed, and we know it's not going to be. So we're going to be
Yeah,
disappointed. But then
yeah,
we have an Elwyn game, which we know is going to be amazing no matter what it is. And it's just
yeah,
like, I don't know, it's a completely different thing.
yeah,
So we're just a bunch of talking heads at this point. But
yeah. And Charles is very lovely. Stayed with us for the whole time. Thanks, man. He reckons it's going to be packed.
yeah.
And we're already going to be disappointed, aren't we? Like, because our idea of packed and probably what
Well,
Stern's
the thing
idea of
about an
packed are two
Elwyn is it
completely different
doesn't
things.
have to be packed to be amazing, right? Like, that's the thing, is all these situations are unique.
Yeah.
Um, but
Oh,
of
look, I
course,
was
it's
I
got to
was
be.
disappointed by Jaws when it first came out. I thought,
Mhm.
I thought that they'd really dropped the ball on it. But when you get it and you play it and you realize that the nuances of it and how it plays and how the code relates to the storyline and everything, like you realize it is an incredible game. So it just goes to show that sometimes when games are released, you can't always just react, in a certain way. You have to really get on it. You have to own it and play it for a
Mhm.
while before you really understand whether it's a good game or not. And sometimes these things come out in the wash, don't they? Sometimes games are creepers, and they only sort of turn into cult games, after 6 months or a year when the code's fully fleshed out.
So, any mods in the works in your brain, Davey, or are you just gonna wait and see how it
Yeah,
comes out?
yeah. No, definitely. We're going to go hard in on it, mate. Of course. We're hoping it's going to be another Godzilla for us. In terms of just being like, I mean, Godzilla was just such a fun game to mod. And both from a mod maker's point of view and from the customer's point of view, everybody just loved modding the crap out of that game. So I'm hoping Kong's going to be the same thing. Um, and it'll probably, go next to Godzilla over there when it finally comes in. And I'm just really excited, man. I love Elwyn Games. He's probably my favorite designer. I mean, he would be my favorite designer. I've loved all of his games. So I'm just excited to see what his next one's going to be, really.
So what you're saying is you want it to be packed, but not too packed.
Yeah. Lots of plastics. I mean, look, ideally, it would have been a buildings thing, right? Like New
Yeah,
York buildings would have been right in my wheelhouse. If it's island themed, that's going to be slightly more tricky.
yeah, yeah.
But I've got some ideas. I've got some ideas,
Well, you kind of
just
crossed
depends.
that. You thought that was going to be an issue on Jaws, and I think that you got your head wrapped around that. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And we're certainly doing a lot more. I think, early on I started doing mod making. We weren't doing a lot of figurative stuff. We weren't doing a lot of sculpting. That's all changed now. We are doing a lot of sculpting work now, doing a lot of painting. So, uh, oh look, so Charles has also said, My buddy at Sunshine Laundromat. Oh, very jealous, mate. I wish I had a buddy at Sunshine Laundromat. Ordered all the black and white ones as well. Yeah, I've got the 70th Godzilla as well. So yeah, I would have ideally liked to seen like a lot of buildings and a New York skyline kind of deal for King Kong. But if my in terms of what I'd like to see in a game, I love sort of like the idea of an island sort of themed game, a bit like Congo, palm trees and island theme, like that sort of, greens and browns and stuff. That sounds amazing to me. So, I mean, from a pinball lover's point of view, I think it sounds like it could be great from an aesthetic point of view. So I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Well, I'll be sure to bring my calipers and do some measurement for you, Davey, so you can
Mate,
get a leg up on
please.
all the
Yeah.
competition, man.
Can you just live stream it and then,
Live stream
just
it.
say, yeah.
Is Neil going to be there? He can handle that for you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure actually. I'm not sure whether he is or not. But if he's not invited, I'll make sure I stick it to him.
All right.
And
Well, we'll try to pin Elwin down and give us some scoop. So expect a video from us one way or another. I think contractually I have to create some piece of content by going to this thing. So you'll see something from us. Everybody, have a great April. I'm sure we'll be back in a couple, 2-3 weeks to tell you about all the games that are coming. And as always, if you guys have any topics you want us to cover, hit us up on the various channels. Davey, it's always great to talk to you,
mate,
man. Have a good
love
one.
to see you, mate. Love to see you, Rob. See you soon,
Until
man.
next time, guys.
Bye.